We're so excited you're in Tucson.
Thanks.
So Chadney is a playwright, painter, set designer, and more, and he's going to tell us all about that. And there's going to be some time for questions, and then we're going to spill back out into the lobby for happy hour. Okay? Here's Chadney.
Hey. Thanks, everyone. First of all, I'm super honored to be invited here. Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure getting to talk to so many of you while I've been here, and yeah, it's great. So Becky started to introduce me. Again, my name is Chadney Everett. I'm a senior creative director with Meow Wolf. Meow Wolf is a company out of Santa Fe, New Mexico that builds large-scale immersive art exhibits, permanent ones. They're interactive, they are maximalist. You'll see lots of images of them. I have like 59 pictures in my slide presentation, you'll see. Yeah, so that's my work with Meow Wolf. My background is in film and television. I also was a fine art painter, a gallery painter for many years, theatrical set designer, writer, etc. So pretty much anything in the arts. But you're not here to listen about my life. We're here to talk about Meow Wolf. So let's do that. Meow Wolf was born in 2008. It was formed by a group of artists who weren't really finding a place for themselves in the traditional gallery system. So instead of adjusting their work to fit into that system, they decided to create their own path with the goal of bypassing the established institutions of the art world and consider a new story for the place of art in the world. It all started in a cheap rundown warehouse in Santa Fe, New Mexico, what they could afford with their day jobs, like delivering food, etc. And those first few years were intensely creative. There was no money except for what people could chip in from their day jobs, but there was a ton of passion. The only thing that mattered back then was showing up and getting to work. Nothing was off the table. It was radically inclusive. Anybody who wanted to be there could be there. And the idea was to completely envelop ourselves in art, in our art, in your art, just in art, period. The questions we asked ourselves were, how do we get people to stay inside of the artistic space? How do we overwhelm people to a degree of meaningful impact? This drove us to make the most maximal, densely detailed environments. Every single creative way you could come at a piece with writers, with painters, with sculptors, musicians, everybody coming at this thing. And we designed it with a yes-and philosophy of improvisational theater. If you've got an idea you're passionate about and you can execute it, that was an important part, go for it. So when asked to describe our work, as I said, the first word out of our mouths is usually maximalist. We live in such a fast-paced, constantly expanding world where everything is consumable and on demand, and we're bombarded daily with so much information that we wanted to yell above that noise, like we wanted to stand out above all of that noise. And so we were going to be so loud, so in your face, that you could not ignore us. During those years, the founders of Meow Wolf were in constant conversation with each other, working and reworking the fundamental philosophical ideas of what we build, why we build it, how we build it, who we are, what we are, how we are, what's important, what's not, focused both on refining our artistic expression and developing the ethos of Meow Wolf, which is one of unquestioning inclusivity, as I said. Cheers. And creating space for any artist that wanted to work. So creating art that our peers could afford, as I said, I used to be a full-time artist, a gallery artist, and one of the things that was really difficult for me, I was just talking with a couple of people about this yesterday. Look, first, I loved that life. It was fantastic. Who wouldn't love working from home in your pajamas every day, right? And just like making art, and I had my studio. It was fantastic. But one of the things that was really challenging for me about that life was that my peers couldn't afford my work. And if I priced it so that they could, I couldn't afford to live. There's something really broken in that system, and I don't mean to demean gallerists. They do amazing work, and I know many incredible gallerists who have a passion for what they do and really working hard to promote artists, but there's something a little bit broken in there that only the wealthy can afford work. And so we wanted to create a structure that made art available to all, millionaire or low-wage worker. And also create a structure where artists can make a good living. That's something that is incredibly strangely lacking in the world, why artists don't get paid. And so that's why we became a for-profit company as well. We considered being nonprofit, but we became for-profit because it meant we could pay artists well. So between 2008 and 2015, we built 26 large-scale exhibits, again, out of pocket, all around the United States. And after each show ended, months of work would be torn apart and scrapped. It's not hard to imagine how frustrating and exhausting that was to have to repeatedly destroy our work after each show, after only being shared for a couple months. So that's why we began to ask ourselves, like, what if we could make the work permanent? How would that work? How could we keep people excited to revisit the same exhibit year after year? Maybe by doing the thing we'd always done, inviting other artists into the space to show their work, by putting on events, creating a living, breathing space that was never done becoming, by creating a permanent exhibit that was never done. Additionally, live shows are a critical part of what we do. That's actually how Meow Wolf started, was Meow Wolf brought all the best concerts to Santa Fe, and some of the people who were a part of the group started decorating out the venues, and eventually the decorations took over, and the venues got pushed to the back, and we became this thing. So basically, if we could manifest the right resources, dollar signs, and the right investors who believed in our vision, maybe we could turn the DIY art collective into a profitable business. A business that would allow artists to get paid to make work, and one that would allow us to realize the scale of the spaces we've been dreaming of making. So it's also it's also a thing that might allow us to share this kind of artistic experience all over the country, maybe even around the world if we're lucky, and that would allow us to deliver thought-expanding artwork to an audience that craves the artistic experience, but might feel excluded by the established art world. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. So in 2015, with little background or understanding of how to do such a thing, we began building our first exhibit in an old bowling alley. We convinced George R.R. Martin to become our landlord. He bought the building and invested money in it, and we still pay him rent. And it was really challenging for us. I mean, when we were trying to describe to early investors what we were doing, we literally had like 3 crappy pieces of concept art, and going around like, hey, we want to do this thing, and it's like art, and it's maximalist, and all this stuff. And they're like, we don't know what the hell you're talking about. But luckily, there was a couple of people who were like, but we believe in your passion, so here's some money. So we were super fortunate in that way. So in March of 2016, we opened the exhibit to the public. The story of how we did it is captured in the Meow Wolf origin story documentary, so I won't bore you with it here, but if you ever want to check it out, by all means. But needless to say, it was a success. We've been very fortunate, as I said. But even with that success, our roots and philosophies remain strong. The ethos that we've been philosophizing on since those first days, and a desire to reimagine how businesses can actually be beneficial to artists, for sure, but also the greater community, led Meow Wolf to become a certified B Corp. So like any corporation, B Corps are interested in making a profit, but that's not the only priority. Equal to profit, we're held to the highest standards of environmental and social impact concerns, as well as public transparency. There's a rigorous application process to become certified, setting benchmarks to aspire to, comparing ourselves to what the best are doing in the country, and being willing to share lessons learned. We chose to become a B Corp because we envision a global economy that uses business as a force of good. An economy that's purpose-driven, creating benefits for all stakeholders, not just shareholders, and that we need to put our money where our mouth was, basically, and be the change we wish to see in the world. Wine break. Anyway, enough about business stuff. Let's talk about how we make art. So in those early days, the founders of the collective collaborated with each other by being down for whatever. In those days, you could basically do whatever you wanted, as long as you could either do it yourself or convince other people to help you. Through that process, we learned a lot about how we work best with each other. And for instance, we learned that everybody working on one single project all together created confusion, hurt feelings, maybe both. And so in experimenting with different exhibit formats, we found that we could work better together if we broke a project up into independent pieces by both physically and conceptually compartmentalizing an exhibit into sections. We could have the creative freedom with smaller groups inside smaller spaces without stepping on each other's toes. To this day, a fundamental aspect of who Meow Wolf is are the ways in which we collaborate and make space for each other. We talk about it all the time, always looking for ways for it to improve. And so those many styles of collaboration are still evolving and probably always will be, because each project has its unique needs and every group works together differently. An example of this is our sprints. A sprint is a rapid prototyping creation process where the usual hierarchies are put aside, giving freedom to the artist to create with the fewest restrictions, just bare bones design requirements. By flattening the typical hierarchical curve or pyramid, we create an environment where projects can develop quickly, artists and technologists feel valued, and an environment is fostered that empowers them to create their best work. And typically the work is far better than anything we could have planned for. We're also still experimenting with structure and structurelessness, still seeking the best ways to be flexible but supportive, to embrace chaos and freedom without forgetting the big picture, or people's well-being, of course, and the value of a shared vision. So from the beginning, we've been aware of the necessary balance between chaos and order. Our origins were very chaotic, and today our pendulum has swung over to the order side. It's really would be incredibly challenging to have a company of 1,000 people, which we do now, and not have a lot of order and structure. That would be something. So, but while structures are hard to build, they're even harder to dismantle, and so we build them really thoughtfully. So as we work on building our creations, we have to have the freedom to discover cooler ideas. The stories in the exhibit and the exhibit spaces co-evolve with each other, each inspiring developments in each other. One of our co-founders once said, "There's an intelligence in the hand." And that's something that's really stuck with us for the longest time. Is that this one? That's the hand one. There's an intelligence in the hand. Some of the best ideas come while you're doing, while you're making something, right? You can't plan for everything. You can't just design everything ahead of time and expect to capture the essential spontaneity that makes art effective and makes it connect with people. So our artists and fabricators have to have the freedom to change their work as they're working. And though we sometimes have to build things very carefully to specifications and plans, it's also important that we leave space for makers to contribute their own voice to the pieces. We have a thing we call the frosting phase in our exhibits, and that's space at the end of every build where teams of artists just come in and finish everything and respond to what's there. So we don't plan for that at all. We build things to a certain point and then step back and let just artists come and be like, wow, this is making me think of this, and they go, right? It's critical to making effective art and art that the artists who are making it feel like empowered to like be that voice, to bring the final touches to the thing, and me stepping back in my role as a senior creative director and be like, you go, and this could totally alter a lot of the vision we've had. Totally cool, do your thing. And it also makes art that has a potential to really connect with people because it's not overly planned. So in addition to the ways that we collaborate internally, every one of our exhibits also holds significant space for outside artists' work. These are predominantly artists from the communities we build our exhibits in. By working with these local artists, a project becomes a collaboration with the community. Our artist collaboration team are among the first on the ground in any community we're going to build an exhibit in. And they're connecting with local artists, curators, et cetera, to make those connections and build lists of artists that we like to ask to work with us. we then work with those artists to develop their projects into designs for installations, and we often support the construction of their projects as well. Both sides learn a lot every time, because with every project we're all doing things we haven't done before. An example of this is Convergence Station. I was the senior creative director for that, as I said earlier. And in that, we opened the exhibit with over 120 local artists' work in the building. That's going to evolve every year. We're going to bring in new artists and kind of keep that a living space in the community. Muralists, musicians, installation artists, sculptors, etc. And it does, yeah, as I said, it doesn't end with that. We're constantly looking for new opportunities and making this a space that actually supports the arts community in that community. This is one of our collaborating artists. No, it's not. That's actually President Harry Truman. We did not work with him. He was long dead before we started. And I'm not going to talk about politics either, I swear. But I hope everybody voted, or is going to. So President Harry Truman once said, "It is amazing what you can accomplish when you don't care who gets the credit." It's a very powerful thing to consider. That quality of collaborative input has been at the core of Meow Wolf since its founding. We don't sign any of our work, so that removes the need for people to own the work, gets the ego out of it from the individual. It's made by us. The things are made by Meow Wolf. Even our collaborating artists don't sign their work. We recommend that they don't. That being said, we do want to celebrate our artists, so we make sure that every one of them, both internal and external, is credited on our credits website, and we have links in every exhibit where you can go discover more about the artists, etc. But great ideas can come from anywhere. So how do we create a culture that allows for that? About a year after opening the House of Eternal Return in 2016, we began to think seriously about what our next permanent exhibit might be. We had no idea where it would be located or what it was going to look like, but we gathered most of the almost 200 employees we had at the time into a large hotel conference room, a little bit smaller than this one, and for 3 days we ideated together. We shared ideas for spaces and stories and themes, and over the course of those days, the ideas that gained traction did so organically through the positive responses of the people there. We eventually built that exhibit, Convergence Station, in Denver, Colorado, and it opened just a year ago. Visit Convergence Station today, and you'll discover pieces of 4 magical, disparate worlds brought together by a rare cosmic event. There's the bustling metropolis of C Street, you see here, which is a city street on the 4th floor of a building, asphalt and everything. There is the underground catacombs of ossuary here, which exists below C Street. The ice world of Emia, with our cathedral there, and a massive 6-dimensional sentient organic being called Numina. All of these worlds accessed via an interdimensional transit station operated by the Quantum Department of Transportation. The results were amazing. Nothing we could have predicted before spending those days in that conference room together. And again, it all evolved up until the day we opened, and it's still evolving today. We're constantly talking about how it's changing. We're making plans for it to change, and then we're also allowing for it to change. So is it efficient to try and ideate on anything with almost 200 people? It's a rhetorical question because the answer is no. It is not efficient at all. There's certainly better ways to do it than we did as well. But again, the best ideas can come from anyone. And discovering the best ideas is so much greater when you see the creative value in everybody you work with. It doesn't matter if they're not in a creative role. A lot of our blue sky groups, when we're getting together to consider what to do for our next exhibits, bringing people from all sorts of disciplines together, because very often the best ideas are going to come from people who are outsiders from your discipline. So having an open system that allows for the sharing ideas has been one of our great strengths in that way. The first 2 worlds I described, C Street and Ossuary, were both initially proposed by longtime Meow Wolf artist Dave McPherson. He showed us rough 3D sketches, this is the one for C Street, of a city with sewers below, and we're like, hell yes, we want to make that. That sounds amazing. It didn't matter. It was just like, if you have a good idea and people are connecting with it, by all means. And the last world you saw, the 6-dimensional organic being Numina, was first conceived by a group of docents and front desk staff at our Santa Fe exhibit, just because they wanted to get together and ideate on a space together for fun. And then when they proposed it to us, we're like, this is amazing. This is so cool. The original concept was sort of earthly swamp, and it evolved over time, like everything does, and became the thing it is now. But again, best ideas can come from anybody, right? Like, it doesn't matter who they are. You don't need special departments for that thing. You need a culture of allowance. That's what you need. Okay, so I'm going to do a bad segue and switch gears. I'm going to talk about the fundamental principle that guides everything that we create. What a great time to take another sip of wine. I get a dry mouth when I'm doing this. So this fundamental principle that guides everything that Meow Wolf creates, we call it the accessible unknown. Those two words seem to capture it beautifully. Another way that that might be expressed is invitation and transformation, or entertainment and art. Entertainment being the accessible invitation, art the mysterious transformation. And Meow Wolf very intentionally balances between these two concepts. But why prioritize both? Many of us that built this company are longtime artists and have spent our lives doing this thing. Why not just focus on the art and leave the entertainment out, which to many in the arts community is seen as unsophisticated and lacking substance? Well, as you probably guessed, I'm going to tell you. By bringing these two things together, we get so many people visiting our exhibits that might never go to a museum or gallery, or otherwise engage in the arts world at all. Maybe because they don't feel like they'd understand it, maybe they're intimidated by the arts world, or maybe it's just because they never felt welcome. So it's the invitation of entertainment that gives us the opportunity to bring the transformative art experience to far more people. And those 120 collaborating artists in the Denver exhibit get to share their artwork with people who might never have gone to one of their gallery openings. We had 1.3 million visitors the first year Convergence Station was open. That's far more people than would ever have gone to a gallery opening, right? And the great majority of those are people who never visit that gallery. So it's an opportunity. The entertainment is an opportunity to invite more people into that world and potentially be transformed by the artistic experience. Additionally, we strive for compassionate transformation. We aren't interested in blowing people's minds, but rather bending them, expanding them, and exciting their potential for creativity. This idea of compassionate transformation is expressed in the design of our exhibits as well, where the first space you encounter tends to be a familiar archetype. In Santa Fe, it's a house. In Denver, a transit station. And in Las Vegas, a grocery store. From these, you are eased into the otherworldly, from the familiar to the unexpected, from the accessible to the unknown. Now, between art and entertainment, the risk will always be greatest on the art side, if the art is any good, that is. Art is risky, and the risk-averse will always want to pull you over to the entertainment side. It makes sense. Humans are always looking for new ways to be entertained. Financial metrics have a clear logic there, and art is unpredictable. But the risk-averse don't understand something that we've learned through experience. People are hungry for the unknown, the transformational, to have their assumptions be compassionately challenged, to be inspired to make work of their own. And the immediate success of our first exhibit was proof of it. In fact, the Santa Fe exhibit has become the #1 tourist attraction in the state of New Mexico, and we're having similar success in Vegas and Denver. Tooting our horn a little bit. Anyway, yeah. Well, thanks. You're very kind. Anyway, I promised I wasn't going to talk about politics, but how about religion? Get into that. Those aren't touchy subjects. Anyway, so Buddha recommended we seek the middle path. Balance between chaos and order, which is building structures that allow for the unplanned or the unplannable, right? So those two things balanced well. Balance between the accessible and the unknown, creating spaces that encourage a maximalist range of human interaction, from joyous play to deep introspection. Another critical piece of this is we only make what interests us as creatives. We're not making what we think people will like. We trust that people feel the same way about the things that we make that we do. We've been lucky so far, and not all of it's successful, and that's also okay. one of the things I often say about our exhibits is if you look at the particulars in our exhibits, you'll often find failures throughout them, but when you zoom out and look at the exhibit as a whole, those small failures are the things that make it appear, because it's true, that a human made this thing, right? And so when you aggregate all of it together, those failures actually become part of the success of that exhibit, because now people feel like they can connect to that on a human level. And so it's even allowing for those and saying, okay, these failures are great because they're helping us in that way. So not being so uptight and so particular and such a perfectionist that you don't allow the humanity into the thing and not see the thumbprint of the artist in the work. And though the great majority of our guests are adults, we unapologetically tap into our childlike wonder as we create. We want to bring out the child in the adult, and the adult in the child. And we aspire to encourage and support the next generation of artists, because while we may need basic things like food, water, and shelter to live, the experience of art and culture is the reason we want to live, right? That's the stuff that makes our lives worthwhile. That's the memories we have. That's everything that we build our lives around. So let's make more art, right? Can you guys think of a circumstance where there's been too much art? Again, rhetorical question. Like, do you ever walk around Tucson and be like, oh, there's too much art in this damn city. I wish there was more infrastructure. Infrastructure is good. I'm not bagging on infrastructure, but still, it's like, do you ever have an experience of too much art in your workplace or in your home, in your life? No, let's make more of it. Let's make more art. Art is born from the creative desire to express the indescribable, trying to tap into that fundamental and mysterious thing that connects us all, every single one of us, as creatures of feeling and imagination. And it isn't limited to a canvas or clay or a museum or gallery or whatever. Anything can be designed with art if the intention is there and the integrity is there. A t-shirt, a car, this conference, like anything can be designed with art. It's about authentically connecting with elemental aspects of ourselves in the process of design. Let's make more of that. Art whose only agenda is to connect us in that place that's deeper than our surface differences and yet celebrates them. And then sharing that with each other. Art is not a noun, it's a verb. Art is not a thing, it's an interaction. An interaction between the piece and the maker, and an interaction between the piece and the viewer. And if we've done our work with integrity, it'll be captured in the work, and it has the potential to transform us, that interaction. The biggest immersive art exhibit of all is this world that we've created together and the stories we tell ourselves and each other every single day in this place. Let's make it with intention and with art. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Finish the wine.
Yeah, get a gulp. If you guys have questions, there's a mic on either side of the stage, and you can please come on up.
I also want to say, if anybody does have any questions, please come up. I'm happy. That's the part I like the best. I'm not good at talking at people. I like talking with people. So please, if you want to have a conversation about art, I'd love to, or what we do, or anything at all. But also, I've just met so many wonderful creatives since I've been here. It's only been a day and a half that I've been here. But I've met so many incredible creatives, and I hope that more of them are supported, in the community. And Henry Brajas, who did the comics thing earlier, was fantastic. I just saw, I think it was in room 203, I don't remember the person's name, and I apologize, talking about the creative process, which was really inspiring, and I took tons of photos of that. What's that? Yes, thank you very much. And then Maiken, who I met yesterday, who does an erotica art show every March, which is fantastic and is about normalizing and celebrating our differences as sexual beings. Yes, let's celebrate that. Hell yes. You have that in Tucson. We don't have that in Santa Fe. That's wonderful. Support that stuff. It's great. Hi.
Hi again, Chadney.
Hi.
So I want to ask you to go back to the George R.R. Martin thing.
Sure, yeah.
Because this took you, it seemed like, from kind of like a small-time art studio to the big installation you got to do.
Yeah.
So how did you meet him? Who knew him?
Sure.
How did that happen? And maybe any advice on anybody trying to make that step and connecting the dots to somebody as influential as he was?
Thanks, Tyler. Yeah, so, I mean, yeah, clearly we were very fortunate in that thing. George has been living in Santa Fe since 1974. That's his home. He owns a movie theater there. One of our founders worked at that movie theater with George. However, he got fired from that movie theater by George. And he was the one who went to him and was like, hey, will you buy us this bowling alley? So, yeah, we were very fortunate in that way, right? And that also George has a ton of disposable income. No, I don't know. I don't know anything about George's bank accounts. This is being recorded. I really don't. But I'm making assumptions. No, we were incredibly fortunate in that way. But the thing is almost every community has those people in them, right? I mean, George just stands out because he's famous. But that's not it. We also have other early investors that literally, like I said, we would have a couple pieces of concept art, and we showed, because George bought our building. I'm getting off topic. George bought our building. We still had to raise funds to build the exhibit within it, right? And that cost us over $3 million, right? And again, this is people we had no money at all. Most of us were not getting paid. It was really challenging because we didn't know how to describe the thing we were doing. So it was a lot of hard work. One of the things that was also very effective about our collective is that we had artists in the collective, but we also had manifestors who weren't necessarily artists, right? They were interested in being involved in the collective, but their role was different. They were supporters, they were producers, they were, those kinds of things. And so they were the ones going out there and raising funds for us. So it wasn't just George. George helped because name recognition made other investors be like, okay, you've got George involved. We're going to take you seriously and at least listen to what you're saying, right? But that can go, if you find, let's say you were trying to do something somewhere in Tucson and you find a wealthy investor, which they exist here, to take you seriously and be that first person who crosses that threshold with you, now when you go to your next investors, you're like, and also this person is an investor with us, and they're like, stop and listen, right? Because they'll know who that person is and respect them. So thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to say, I'll just finish up while you're coming up, that it was really, really hard in the beginning, right? We worked really hard and none of us made money, and it was like, I was the first official employee of Meow Wolf. I made $400 a week for 18 months. While we worked, 16-hour days. And so it was really hard, but we all had a passion for what we were doing. Yeah, please.
Thanks for being here, Chadney.
Thank you.
I visited Meow Wolf in Vegas.
Cool.
I drive past Santa Fe all the time going up to Denver, which
Yeah.
I haven't been to either.
Yeah.
But I love the passion that you bring in connecting all the artists and really the community.
Mm-hmm.
I feel that Tucson's been an amazing community of artists for as far as when I was born here in '83.
Uh-huh.
First part of the question, what goes into picking your locations? Vegas, Denver, Santa Fe. Obviously Santa Fe, as you guys were there.
Yeah.
But Denver and Vegas. And the second part would be, what would it take to get one in Tucson?
You're not the first person. Thank you. Surprise, surprise, you're not the first person to ask that. There's a lot that goes into it. Again, I described, we're a B Corp, right? And so being a B Corp, and we're also one of the highest rated B Corps in anything like our field. We take it very seriously. We have to reprove it every year, right? So you have to be held to your standards and achieve them every year. You can't slag off. So it's really important to us that how we come into communities and who our partners are. We don't want to come in as a gentrifier. We don't want to disrupt an established neighborhood. We want to be a benefit to the neighborhood, be an employer for a neighborhood. We want to make sure that what we're doing is going to support artists, support neighborhoods, et cetera. So those are critical factors in the thing. which means that it's finding the right city, the city government that is really supportive of what we're doing, finding the right partners within the city who want to help us develop the thing, as well as finding the right location. So there's a lot of factors that go into it. I am not one of the people, I'm very glad to say, who makes those decisions. Once they are decided, then I go and help build the thing in that community. But there's so many factors that go in, and it can often take years for us to find that right place, the right partners, and everything else. It's because of the criteria we have in that process. So yeah, thank you. Anybody else? Oh, hi.
Hello, hi. I just had a quick question.
Sure.
I was wondering, how do you maintain sort of your true north, working with so many different people? You mentioned having 200 employees when you first, a few years ago.
Yeah.
How do you maintain that, working with so many artists and manifestors, and I'm sure you have a core group as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. Who knows? Honestly, it's really challenging with, again, we have about 1,000 employees right now. Many of them work at our exhibits, so I think there's over 300 in the Denver exhibit, et cetera. But probably 500 people based out of Santa Fe, so it's really large, and it can be very easily to become siloed, right? And that is death to what we do. And so it's something we're working very hard on. I'm not kidding when I say we talk about it weekly. We're always talking about how we open up our systems and get rid of siloing and invite other people into the process and break down all those barriers, because it can be very natural, because siloing is efficient, right? And when you're making art is inefficient, right? And so we need to find a balance between those efficiencies, which we must have because we need to build things economically, right? We can't blow our budgets and all this other stuff, but then make room for those inefficiencies, which means bringing people into the process that might not normally be a part of that process, et cetera. It's consistently challenging, though, when you get to this scale, right? And you build out these structures. And so that's why, again, we're trying to build them out very thoughtfully, and why we're in constant conversation about this. I'm called a creative director. I'm a senior creative director with Meow Wolf, but we use those titles because they're traditional, but also the director part doesn't vibe with us, right? I consider myself more to be like a gardener in a way. I create shade for people and fertile soil and create environments within which they can do their best work, right? And then I just help guide it to fit into this big vision, right? And so it's here's your space to create. You do the thing, and oh, what if we adjusted this one thing because then it would fit into that really nicely, whatever. That. So creating those kinds of environments, right? But in every department, if possible. It's challenging. It takes work. You have to do it with intention. And you have to fight the natural inclination for efficiency, which is not that, right? Which is weird.
That was a beautiful response. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, of course. I appreciate it. Hi.
Hello. Good evening, and thank you for being
Nice
here.
shirt.
Thank you. I have been to all of your exhibits, and I love them, so very excited that you're
Amazing.
here.
Thank you.
So I've been in Tucson for a couple of years and work in the community, and we have had trouble building community post-pandemic.
Sure.
So I have two questions. One is practical and one is philosophical. So my first question is, there's this phrase, if you build it, they will come, and we found that is not the case.
No.
So I'm wondering what has gone into kind of educating the public around your storytelling and building up your community of people who enjoy the work that you do.
Yeah.
My philosophical question is, to what extent do you believe fortune favors the bold?
Oh, that's great. Yeah. I mean, you have to, look, when I've talked about art and entertainment and the balance between those two things, I think that's a really critical thing. And the way I describe it is we sit on the fence and we're kind of balancing between those two things. And it's very intentional, right? And there are forces that want to pull you away from the riskier work. But when we do that, we're just in competition with a bunch of other people who are already doing kind of big, broad entertainment, large-scale entertainment, right? And they've been doing it for much longer than we have and much more successfully than we have, and we fail, right? And so being bold and maintaining that thing that makes us stand out and be unique, even though that thing is risky, when you really think about it, it's actually the opposite of risky, because it's literally the thing that is what has made us successful, right? like taking risk in that way and continuing to take risk in that way is our success, you know? And so it's kind of backwards thinking. If you come at it from one direction, it's coming from like a fear mind in a way, right? And not seeing the truth of the thing. There was another part to your question. Remind me what that is. Oh, so how do we get the you know, kind of the word out to people? Well, there was an amazing marketing and branding talk earlier that I loved at this table right here. Hello. One of the things I describe is like branding and marketing to me are like branding is the way I dress and marketing is the way I talk to you, right? That's the voice of what you do. And a lot of people, especially in arts, can look at marketing and be like, they like see like this evil empire that made, you know, these Amazon and all this stuff. But actually they're wonderful creative tools, right? Because they literally are the voice of who you are, right? And the people who are in charge of your branding and marketing are the people who are talking to everybody else about what you do. And so having artists that you love and trust doing that work with you and working closely with them to do that work is everything. I work with our marketing people. I'm at least in at least one marketing meeting every week, just talking about a variety of different things based on our work because it's so critical to what we do. And so that, I mean, to me, that's it. Like we have relied on our branding and marketing people from the beginning. One of our founders, Emily Montoya, created our brand, the Meow Wolf logo, and she's a nerd for this kind of stuff, right? She just loves it. And so from the beginning, we've had really strong voice, you know, kind of reaching out to people outside. And so that, to me, is critical. We worked with Wieden and Kennedy on the Denver exhibit, who are a great ad firm. They've done Nike and all this other stuff. We really love them, and they're as weird as we are. And for that campaign, I talked to them about like how, we were talking about Coca-Cola earlier. You can see a billboard that's red with a white swoosh on it, and that's it. That's brand confidence, right? Coke can just put that billboard up there, and it's just red with the white swoosh, and you know exactly what it is. And what they're also telling you in that marketing is like, this is how confident we are in our brand, right? And so for the Denver campaign, I was like, let's use that confidence. I had developed an alien language that was actually kind of complicated to decipher. And we just, with Wieden and Kennedy, created these billboards where they're just black with this vortex going in and just this alien script on them. And that was it for like months, just these evolving billboards that were there. And like, it had confidence in it. Like some of our marketing people were a little freaked out about it, but it's just like, it's confident, right? And it's telling people like, we believe in ourselves this strongly. If you tell people that you're worth believing in that strongly, that you believe of yourself that strongly, then they will believe you, right? And they'll say like, oh, clearly they are of that quality. Right? So that's what you're telling them in that process. On top of that, we had people in Reddit forums deciphering all of my language, and like it was a whole thing, right? So you're also creating something where people are interested in doing that thing, and like they're kind of cracking all the codes and everything. And I think this says Convergence Station opening in, you know, like it was great. It worked really well. So yeah, that's my answer to that. I mean, your voice.
Okay, so fortune does favor the bold.
It does.
Cool. Okay. Good.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Hi.
My name's Kevin.
Hi,
Thanks
Kevin.
for coming down, Chadney.
Thank you.
I used to live in Denver and before you guys did the Convergence Station, I was really impressed by all the community panels you did.
Oh,
I
yeah.
attended multiple ones, even submitted ideas for the installation.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm wondering when you go into the local community and work with the local artists, how it all shook out in the end with Phoenix and Denver with, you know, like how many of the local artists' voices were in the collective at the end, how they got paid,
Yeah.
and then also, did you end up, you know, there's so many little or big collectives in all these communities. Did you collaborate with collectives in general, or was it more individual artist concepts? Just, you know,
Right.
seeing the front end of it and then seeing the actual installation. I'm just wondering
Yeah.
how that process went.
So thank you for the question. So we just had a broad open call for artists to come. It was an, oh my God, what's the term? Request for proposal. That was it. Yeah. Not an RFP though, request for qualifications, an RFQ. So we did that thing and we had like 1,200 people go through that process. And there was probably like over 3 months that myself and 3 other creative directors sorted through all those proposals to get it down to about 110, which is very challenging, right? Because very often you're picking or you're putting aside work that's of a really high quality because you're thinking about how it all works together, right? So that's the consideration, is like, yes, the quality of the artist's work, but then also how does all this work together? But also with the understanding that it's not done when we open, right? Like every year we're bringing in new artists. This is never ending, right? And that's something we had to remind artists of all the time. The way we pay artists is we've now developed a system. It was pretty rough back then. We were like making some guesses, and like now we actually have, through our Han Santana Sales, who runs our artist liaison group, literally has calculators that she's using now to figure this out, depending on like what the artist's rates usually are, where they are in their career, the scale of what they were asking them to do, etc. There's materials budget plus, an artist fee in that thing, and so that's how that kind of part's working. Was there another part to your question? I'm sorry.
Oh, well, in the end, like how much of the Denver was kind of like the local voices.
Oh.
And I understand too, like
Yeah.
with the Meow Wolf concept, what you're doing is you're taking all these voices and trying to fit them into a
Totally.
bigger narrative. And weren't artists, like some of the local artists, part of that narrative, like developing the narrative? And
Totally. Yeah, we did invite some in. We, no surprise, we have lawyers. And so they're concerned with our IP and like how we share that with people and stuff. So we do have versions of contracts we have with artists where they can play within our IP, and then we share the rights to work and, like whatever. So there's things like that, or at least we've had that in the past. Also, you asked about like, do we work with collectives and stuff like that? Not so much. We did reach out to some, but honestly, we were really interested in finding the artists who don't get represented, right? Like in every community, there are artists who kind of are at all the things, right? Like they've got a voice, and like some people know they're out there, and some people reach out to them because, they're a known artist. But there's always these incredible artists who are like either very shy or like haven't been discovered yet, or are from an underrepresented community or something like that we're just really interested in finding out. And so that's why our liaison team is on the ground first, is to start to make those connections and like asking artists, like, who are your favorite artists? And then asking that person, who's your favorite artist? And kind of trying to dive down and delve into the community and find those hidden gems. We're also, like I said, super interested in artists who aren't well represented. And so like for the Denver exhibit, we had 51% of our artists identified as women. Like one of my rules is like, I don't want to see a room where it's just like one white dude after another white dude. You know what I mean? Like that's not going to happen. And so, yeah, I mean, it's just like that's what you see all over the place. So 51% identified as women, 38% were people of color, and then over 20% were queer. And so like looking to make sure that we're like representing well as well, and you can find quality artists in every community. And so just go looking in that community to like represent them. So we weren't really looking for collectives or anything like that. We're trying to find these artists that weren't being represented. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, appreciate it.
Chadney Everett, everyone.
Thanks.